Hello everybody, my name is Xander Navarro, and in this video I'll be showing you how to put your music into a role-playing game, which is commonly referred to by its acronym RPG. I'll be using programming software for all 4 steps of this. The first step will be creating a MIDI file, the second step will be sound production, the third step will be audio looping, and the fourth step will be the creation of the RPG itself. So let's go ahead and move on to step 1, which will be to create our MIDI file. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, and there are actually a lot of methods one can use to create MIDI files. However, I was trained to create them using music notation software, so that's what I'll be using. Regarding music notation software, there's a lot of options. There are a lot of options out there. Today's industry standards for composers and music publishers are Dorico, Sibelius, and Finale, but I hear there's also a free program called MuseScore. Sibelius is the one with which I'm most familiar, so I'll be using that. So we're in Sibelius, and what we're going to do is set up our page. We're going to start with a letter page size. I personally like, for house style, I like to use the Moderna one. For the instrument, we're just going to go ahead and start with a piano. We will add it to the score and click OK. We'll start in 4/4 time, and we'll add a metronome mark and put it at 100 for now. We'll find our tempo a little bit later. As for the key, let's go ahead and do a flat major. So that'll be in our major flat keys. Find A flat major. And since I'm a student at Texas A&M Commerce, what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and use a familiar tune that everyone here knows, which will be our alma mater. And let's go ahead and click Create and move into it. Okay, so now we have our document created, and the first step I would like to do is go to the View tab and click on Panorama, and what this is going to do is give us a straight line view of our music as opposed to pages. And since we want our music to loop, we want the phrase to be nice and even, so let's go ahead and make it 8 bars. That'll be Control B on desktop. I think it's Function B on Mac. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and start writing the melody. Okay, so now that we have our melody, let's go ahead and add our bass line. So now that we have our bass line, what I want to do is start filling out some of the chords. Okay, so I have the MIDI file complete here, and as you can see, this is not exactly how I would write it for an actual pianist, but I mean, that would require a visual-based approach. This is a sound-based approach, since we will be importing it directly into a sound production program. The main thing we want to make sure of for right now is that our last measure will sound good looping to our first measure, so let's play the last measure. And then back to the first measure. And that's all we need. So now what we're going to do is export the MIDI file, and then we will put it into our digital audio workstation program. Okay, so moving on to step 2, which will be sound production, we'll be using what's called a digital audio workstation. Just like music notation software, there are a lot of options, and as far as I'm aware, the most popular one in the industry standard is Pro Tools. However, for video game production, the most popular one of which I'm aware is Fruity Loops, and that's what I'll be showing you here. So now that we're in Fruity Loops, let's go ahead and import the MIDI file. We'll start by, I don't know if it'll show the window, but just like the export in Sibelius, you just go to File, Import, and then MIDI file, and then choose the file. Now that we've imported our MIDI file, what we want to do is create the sound. In order to create the sound, let's go ahead and right-click on Piano and click Replace. And what I want to do is create an organ sound, and for organ sounds, I like this program called Harmless. So click on Harmless, and you can see the interface open up for that. And on the top right section, there's a presets option. And under keyboards and presets, there is a sound called Church Organ 2 that I like. Now, for sound production, you generally want to have a grasp on all of the knobs so that way you can tweak them, but for the purpose of this demonstration, we're just going to go ahead and use factory settings. Let's lower the volume a little bit because it may be a little loud, and let's test how it sounds. Yeah, I think that sounds fine. So that's what we'll go ahead and use for our loop. So let's go ahead and export the file. Same thing as Sibelius, we just go to File, go to Export. Let's go ahead and export it as an MP3 file. There we go. So now what we want to do is use looping software. We can sometimes create loops through our digital audio workstation, but what I like to do for video games is use Audacity to create OGG files. And OGG files are OGG Vorbis compressed audio files. And what you can do is program them to repeat. So let's go ahead and import our audio. So now that we've imported our audio file, what we want to do is go down here and make sure that start and length of selection is selected. And we want to make sure that these are measured in samples. So the start of the selection is at 0 samples. That's where we want the loop to start. And this will be how long we want the loop to be. So in order to find out the length of the loop, what we do is highlight, and we can see that our loop will be 1,477,823 samples. So what we do is we export our project as an OGG file, and there are specific instructions for this. First, we type loop start at this bottom line, and we just type 0 because that's where the sample will begin. And then we click add, so it adds one line. And then we type loop length, make sure that the spelling is correct, and we type this number, and then we click OK. And now we have our OGG file created. So we're done with Audacity. Now let's move on to step 4, which will be to add the music to our RPG. Our RPG program is RPG Maker MZ. The first thing we want to do is ensure that our music is in the correct databases. So let's go ahead and go to our documents and go to the RPG Maker MZ folder, which for me is RMMZ. And then I made this town called Village of Commerce, and the game file should have its own folder, and within that folder should be an audio folder. Now within the audio folder, you'll have 4 types of audio. You'll have background music, background sounds, musical effects, and sound effects. Now, for the game over, what we want to ensure is that our audio file is in musical effect, and I also made an additional surprise arrangement for you all, which we'll go ahead and add into background music. Now that we have our audio files in the appropriate sound databases, let's go ahead and move to the RPG Maker. We want to change the game over music. What we want to do is press F9, and that will open our database. And what I want to do is go to System 1, and over in the top right corner there's a box that says Music, and underneath Type it says Game Over. What we do is just double click on that, and we choose our alma mater organ, and there we go. Now when we get our game over, the organ version of the alma mater will play.